Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We are here today because today, as you know, or for those who don't know, is Equal Pay Day. This is the day that we take a moment. Many of my lovely colleagues are wearing red. I'm wearing a shade of red. But this really indicates and symbolizes women being in the red when it comes to them working hard but not getting the same amount of compensation. Equal pay for equal work. And so today we will be talking briefly about a collection of policy issues that really focus on the economic security for women and families. We will first start off with myself and Rep. Kleitz talking about Ohio's Equal Pay Act. Then we will have Ms. Erin Ryan from the Ohio Women's Public Policy that will have some remarks, followed by Representative Boyd as well as Representative Boggs talking about Ohio's paid family leave, and then that will be followed lastly by Representative Erica Crawley, who will then discuss the Equal Pay Hotline. So briefly starting off, when we talk about the Ohio Equal Pay Act, as many of you will know, when we talk about this wage gap, here in Ohio, the wage gap from white women to white men is 76 cents to the dollar. When we talk about African American and Black women, that gap is 64 cents to the dollar. And then when we are talking about our Latina sisters, the wage gap is 58 cents to the dollar. So when you see this gap, the gap is very real and it has severe consequences for Ohio's economy. Myself and Rep. Kleitz are proposing Ohio's Equal Pay Act, which will do 4 things. I'll talk about 2 things and then pass it off to Rep. Kleitz, who will then go into the other components of the Ohio Equal Pay Act, as well as just the reason why this is so important for our state. 2 components. One that many of you all have heard because we have consistently introduced this legislation. The first thing will ensure that any business that operates that gets funding from Ohio's tax base, which includes women, will ensure and they will sign off on an equal pay certificate, which indicates that they are paying their workers equally, right, for the same amount of work. A new element of this bill this year, we have seen some success in an Equal Pay Act that was introduced in Massachusetts and actually passed, was actually removing that barrier of requiring employees to ask for a potential applicant's salary history. As we know, the wage gap happens very early, and so removing that actual barrier of requiring employees to ask for salary history will just allow companies as well as potential employees to actually have a real negotiation based on what an actual employee will be doing. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Representative Kleitz that will talk about the other 2 components of the Ohio Equal Pay Act, and we'll continue on. Rep. Kleitz.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much for your interest in the equal pay and family medical leave bills. I'm grateful to the leadership of the women with the Democratic caucus that have championed these family issues for years, including Reps. House and Clyde, who introduced the equal pay bill last 2 General Assemblies. I'm honored to be part of the historic number of women now serving at the state, and we are eager to continue to make sure we address important issues impacting Ohioans' everyday life, like these family issues. Fighting the wage gap is about paying women their fair share. In Ohio, as Rep. House said, are paid 76 cents for every dollar a man makes. This results in the average wage gap of about $10,000 per year for every working woman. Over a 40-year career, women will lose about $450,000. That would have to work the age of 71 to catch up with a man's earnings of 60 years. This is money that working families cannot afford to lose in Ohio. On National Equal Pay Day, we bring awareness to how far into the next year all women must work to earn what men earned in the previous year. I'm honored to join Rep House today to introduce the Equal Pay Act, which will prohibit gag orders, require government entities to evaluate their employees' pay scales, and create equal pay certificate for businesses who contract with the state. About half of all of our workers report that talking about wage and salary information is discouraged, prohibited, or often leads to punishment at their workplace. Women don't often know that they are making less than their male counterparts because they're prohibited to talk about this. This bill will protect workers by prohibiting these gag orders on employees. By doing so, we can better combat the wage gap. This bill also requires government entities to evaluate their employees' pay scales to ensure that compensation is based on the skills, responsibilities, and working conditions of that job, so that adjustments can be made where women-dominated jobs categories have been undervalued. This is crucial because not only do women get paid less than their male counterparts working the same job, but women-dominated job categories are also undervalued and therefore underpaid. It is unfair to continue paying women less for doing the same work as men here in Ohio. It affects our economy, working families, and limits a woman's career growth. Ohio is currently ranked 37th and receives a C- for employment and earnings for women. We must address this issue now to secure our future growth. So next I'll introduce Erin Ryan, who is going to talk about these same issues. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Erin Ryan, and I'm the Managing Director of the Ohio Women's Public Policy Network. We're a coalition of more than 30 organizations working collaboratively to advance policies that build economic opportunity for women and families. Equal pay for equal work is a core component of our policy agenda, and we're proud to support legislation like the Ohio Equal Pay Act, working to ensure that women are able to reach their full economic potential to provide for themselves and their families. The persistent, pervasive wage gap remains a harsh reality for women, particularly women of color. And the wage gap not only impacts women's paychecks now, but has long-term consequences for women's wealth attainment, investment, and retirement savings. Whether in low-wage or high-wage jobs, women's experience a pay gap in nearly every single occupation and sector of work. And the wage gap cannot be merely explained away by women's choices. Even when adjusting for certain variables like age, experience, and education, a gap still exists for unexplained reasons, most likely discrimination and bias. On average, women working full-time in Ohio continue to make 75 cents for every dollar their male colleagues take home. But this is just the average for women, and women of color face a substantially larger wage gap. In Ohio, Black women are paid 64 cents, and Latinas pay just 61 cents for every dollar paid to white, non-Hispanic men. Equal pay is exceptionally important for working mothers as they play an increasingly important role in the economic security for their families. Yet working mothers often face an even larger pay gap, known as the motherhood penalty, earning on average just 71 cents for every dollar a working father takes home. And this gap may seem inconsequential when narrowing in on the cents lost for every dollar. But over a 40-year career, Ohio women stand to lose more than $500,000 compared to male counterparts. And again, this is just the average. The wage disparities for women of color mean that they experience an even higher typical loss of lifetime earnings. And over a lifetime, Black women stand to lose more than $700,000, and Latina women typically nearly $800,000. And behind these statistics are real women, real families who are bearing the weight of unfair and discriminatory wage practices. Wage inequity means that women have less to spend on themselves and their families, less to invest and save for the future, and less to put back into businesses and the local economy. Equal Pay Day is a stark reminder of just how far we have to go as a state to fully break down these barriers to women's economic and workplace equality. But it also serves as an opportunity to address those barriers head on. It's not enough just to teach women how to negotiate pay or navigate unfair hiring practices. There must be a concerted effort to dismantle systemic discrimination, enact stronger workplace policies that support the dual role women play as caregivers and breadwinners, like paid family leave, and update our state's laws to better promote fair and equal pay practices. Closing the wage gap is not an impossible challenge, but our state's policymakers must take action to address pay inequity, and that means enacting the Ohio Equal Pay Act. This bill would take significant steps forward in addressing root causes of the wage gap, such as retaliation for discussing pay, while promoting an environment in Ohio's businesses that supports and fosters equal fair pay practices. If the current pace of change continues at the same rate it has in the United States since 1960, men and women will not reach gender pay equity until the year 2059. And that is far too long for women and families to wait. Thank you.
Next, we will have Representative Janine Boyd, who will talk about the paid family leave.
Good morning, buenos dias. Thank you for being here. The fact of the matter is that roughly half of the workforce in the state of Ohio are women. Women get pregnant. Women are traditionally the first in line in terms of caregivers when there's an aging or ill loved one. And our population is aging, right? So we can't talk about equity in the workplace. We can't talk about maternal or infant mortality. We can't talk about taking pregnancies to full term in a healthy and safe way. We can't talk about any of those things unless we talk about paid family leave. We're falling behind as a nation not having paid family leave. We are not adding to the economy at the rate countries that have paid family leave are adding to their economies. And people get sick. That's the fact of the matter, is that people get sick. People are sick right now serving breakfast in different places. They're sick caring for someone who is in home and getting home health care. They're home health care professionals taking care of people with fragile immune systems already. There are pregnant workers who, by their medical professionals' recommendations, should be decreasing hours on foot, but cannot. All of these people that I'm talking about are working and should not be, but they're sick and they're working. So paid family and medical leave is a vital part of equity among women, and we just can't continue without it. I would like to bring my joint sponsor, Rep. Boggs, up to talk further about paid family leave, but in a nutshell, it's the FMLA structure, but paid and simply assessing premiums from employee paychecks. So not an added cost to employers, but providing, again, an opportunity for families to care for themselves, for each other, and get back to work whole and ready to work, and not have to choose between caring for their health, their family's health, and stabilizing their families, choosing between those things and paying their bills.
Thank you, Representative Boyd. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you this morning about our paid family medical leave bill. I was actually a few minutes late walking in this morning because I ended up getting into a debate on the elevator with one of my colleagues, another legislative member, about whether or not equal pay was a real thing. He indicated that there were many reasons that he believed justified employers paying employee women less than their male counterparts. And it was interesting to me that one of the biggest issues and reasons why he cited that this was justifiable to pay a woman less was that women tend to be the primary caregivers, and that they are, whether it's through their own choosing or whether it's through necessity, taking more time off work to care for family members. So I appreciated, although we didn't land on this issue the same way, that he recognized how entangled equal pay is with our paid family leave bill. Because it is true that women tend to take more time off work to care for themselves, a loved one, the birth of a new baby, and as a consequence of being that primary caregiver and taking on those caregiving responsibilities, they do suffer financially from being gone from work, and they do result in not being paid equally as their male counterparts at work. And so if all of the legislature can accept that as a reality, we should be working towards fixing that. No Ohioan should ever have to choose between caring for a loved one or caring for their own medical issue and being able to afford a roof over their head or put meals on their table. We know that paid family leave is necessary to ensure the economic security of Ohioans, but even more so, we know that paid family leave will bring economic benefit to this state. And so I encourage all of my legislative colleagues to recognize the intersection between these two issues and how important it is to invest in Ohioans and make sure that they can support their families and care for their loved ones and earn equal wages, because at the end of the day, we know that women control the purchasing power. They're making economic decisions, and this is money that would be going back into Ohio's economy, which is extremely important. So thank you for being here today. I will turn it back over to Representative House.
Thank you so much, Representative. And finally, we will hear from Representative Crawley, closing us out on our policies that help with economic security for women and families. Representative Crawley.
And I'll ask Representative Boyd to join me up here as we are sponsoring this bill together. Thank you all for joining my Democratic women colleagues and me to recognize some of the work we are and will be doing this General Assembly to address disparities in pay. As we have listened and digested the statistics and the impact that the wage gap has on families, women, people of color, and other protected classes, we as a state must prevent even further discrimination, inequality, and injustice. We need to confront the problem head-on and implement proactive and not reactive policies. Representative Boyd and I will be introducing legislation that will require the Ohio Civil Rights Commission to establish and maintain a system for an individual to anonymously report wage discrimination by an employer in violation with the Ohio Civil Rights Law. Complaints can be submitted by calling a toll-free telephone number or through the Commission's website. It is my hope that with the creation of this anonymous complaint system, workers will know they have a safe place to address their concerns, wage discrimination will be remediated in a timely manner, and employers will be held accountable for unfair and unequal practices. Let us remember, when we are all paid equally for the work that we do, society as a whole benefits. By enacting these policies, we will keep Ohio's promise that if you work hard, you can get ahead regardless of your gender.
I'll just add that, you know, all of this legislation is intended to protect, again, half the workforce in the state of Ohio, and provide opportunity for families to be whole and thrive in our state. And we can't talk about any of the other ills. We cannot talk about anything to do with infant mortality or maternal mortality or any of those things if we do not provide legislative protections for the half of the workforce that's currently without them. We need equity, we need paid family leave, and we need policies that support equity. Thank you for being here.
So now we will open it up for any questions that anyone may have. Yes. The combination of which one? So 3 different ones. If you're in regards to the Ohio's Equal Pay Act, this will be likely our 5th time introducing it, because I know it's been probably around the 5th time being introduced. One of the things where we feel like there is a stronger ability to have more positive conversations and positive movement in this legislation. This time around, Representative Kleitz and myself are beginning the initial work to actually talk with our businesses, our chambers of commerce. We have a strong partnership with our brothers and sisters in our unions who can actually talk. It's great to see Melissa Cropper here from OFT, who have already set a structure in place of what it means to Ohioans when you have equal pay for equal work, which they can really show it's not a disservice. It's not a hit to your business. It's not even the right thing to do economically. It's the economically wise investment to make here in Ohio.
You're going up against Republican legislature, which we have in the past. And so So, you know, I think one of you referred to talking to one of your colleagues on the elevator about it. How do you get this Republican legislature that hasn't traditionally bought into equal pay, how do you get them to do it this time?
I think this time around, people are really honing in on where we are as a state, Ohio. Ohio is older than most states. We are not growing at the rate where we need to go. And what you will see is the women tend to live longer than men. That's just generally. And so really, from the economic perspective, having our colleagues understand the financial catastrophe we are going to put Ohio in if we are not ensuring that women or men are being paid equally for the amount of work. People talked about the enormous amount of wages that are lost. That is enormous amount of wages when we talk about taxes that are being put in our state, productivity for purchasing power. And I think this is a real way we can make connections with our colleagues to really understand the economic devastation that we're going to be causing to Ohio by not setting a better foundation for men and women to know that they will be equally paid for the work that they do in Ohio.
Has that argument brought any Republicans on board?
We're working, those are the conversations that we are beginning to have.
What is the key pushback you usually get outside of what Representative Boggs here today?
Yeah, I think, I mean, and that is the case. Many people, like, they just don't believe it. And then we have to just understand, we live in a patriarchal society, right? Many of the people who are leading here in Ohio, they have, you know, you grow up in homes where there was a certain structure, but times are different now. Many women here in Ohio are the main breadwinners of their house. So many of the experiences that my male counterparts might have had growing up, where their father went to work and their mother stayed home, that's not the reality for a significant portion of women of Ohio, and having them really understand that and beginning to even have these, you know, these actual exchanges, living a day in her shoes, right? To actually understand what a woman goes through to be the head of household, what that means for Ohio when we don't invest properly, and making sure there are some assurances that, you know, the traditional mindset of men going home to make the bacon and the women, you know, cooking it, that everybody going out to, you know, to earn their bacon. So, and again, it's these conversations. It's hard to push back from what you may have personally experienced or what's in your network. And so we know it's through education and experience where we will be able to make positive steps forward to making these policy ideas a reality and law here in Ohio. Any other questions?
Talk about the bill deals with gag orders on.
Yes.
I know most companies don't have a specific gag order something you sign. But there is a general
Understanding, yes.
So is that what
that's what we are referring to. It's usually we're not going to talk about it here. We're talking about the culture that companies have where there can be some retaliation for an employee that understands there are differences in how genders are being paid in the workforce. Ohio will hopefully, not hopefully, when this bill becomes a law, we will provide protection for them.
You shared some data about the wage gap between men and women, but do you have any data to show how this may have worked in other states that have adopted policies like this, to see how it's maybe shifted?
Right, yes, and I can actually provide you, you know, the National Women's Law Center has actually an exhaustive list broken down by state. They've also been tracking how this law has been working, you know, in the states, and I can provide you all that data if you would like.
What's the upshot of it, though?
Excuse me?
What's the upshot of that data?
The upshot is basically there is not any economic harm, right? So one of the things that we do know you have, and that's where we're getting the collection of businesses. You know, there were many of our national business who actually signed out in the previous presidential administrations. They had an equal pay pledge that people signed on to. There are many people, like in just most recently, the state of Massachusetts passed their Equal Pay Act, and we're looking at what companies signed on in Massachusetts that are operated in Ohio. If you could do it in Massachusetts, you could do it here in Ohio. Ohio, for our national companies. And with that thought is that they are not being harmed economically, and if you can do it in one place, why not do it here?
There have been studies done that show that the wage gap isn't as big when you take into certain considerations, choice of career, family issues and such, as
I will.
talking about. It doesn't account for all the gap, but there is some argument out there that the gap isn't as big as it seems. What is your response?
Well, the reality is, why leave it to chance, right? One of the things that we know, even in fields where people are the same, for our attorneys, right? Men and women attorneys, again, doing the same amount of work, are not being paid the same. When you look at men and women educators, again, at times, they may not be paid the same amount. Engineers, this is going all across the board, regardless of professions. And the thing about, it may not be as big, why is there any gap at all? That's the thing. We have to get to a place to valuing our workers here in Ohio. You should be paid the same amount for the same work. It is just that simple. And like I said, we are doing ourselves a grave disservice by allowing companies to just operate the way that they want. When you realize there are a lot of companies in Ohio that are benefiting from women's taxes, and why wouldn't they want to ensure that they are being paid the same amount of work, the same amount for the exact same work?
You mentioned that you've spoken to a few Republican colleagues. Have you spoken to anyone in leadership so far to see if...
We will be having in the next 3 weeks, actually, a sit down with leadership. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your time. Again, spread the word. April 2nd is Equal Pay Day Act. We appreciate you for your time. Oh, sorry.
I just need your name.
Oh, I'm Representative Stephanie House. Sorry, Representative Stephanie House of Ohio's 11th House District. Sorry. Thank you. Have a great day.
Good job.